You mustn't let your guilt consume you. You can still redeem your mistakes. Borderless Fog is a Netflix original from Indonesia. It was written and directed by Edwin, also written by Afan Ismail. Check out their IMDb pages for the full list of their work. And we see Detective Sonia, played by the incredibly gorgeous and just captivatingly stunning Putri Marino, who, God, I need to check out more of her filmography because holy shit. From the moment she appears on screen, like, God damn. And it's nice to have a central lead with an actress that is bound and determined to be the anchor for this suspense crime thriller story where a body turns up without its head along the Indonesian-Malaysian border. And when you have a crime that takes place basically of the border of two regions, there's going to be some tension. Even if people are willing to work together, some want to take credit for it. Some want to just say, no, we'll be over here. You just work on that. And yes, Detective Sonia is bound and determined to figure out what's going on. And let's just say she has a bit of a chip on her shoulder. Maybe she has a chip on both shoulders. Maybe there's a bunch of Dorito chips and there's some spicy chips. Or maybe it's Lay's Stacks and Pringles. Whatever chip you want it to be. Who likes chips on their shoulders? They're hard to eat though. But that being said, when you have a chip on your shoulder, you don't want help, even though deep down you know you need help. Also, Sonia has a bit of a sordid past that we find out about a little bit later on. So naturally, being, a detective, she is going to have to come to grips with that past, the ghost of her past, shall we say, as she investigates more and more bodies losing their heads and the reasons behind them. So there is a detective named Thomas. An Indonesian man named Thomas just makes me laugh. I don't know why. And also a police investigator type guy named Panka. If I get any of these names wrong, if I get even within the ballpark pronouncing them correctly, I'm grateful. From there, we have a few twists and turns, even though, I'm going to be perfectly honest, I pretty much call the people that were involved in this, especially the main person. And even though there are some parts of the story that are actually pretty straightforward, there are a few convoluted parts. There's some good cinematography. And once again, Miss Marino, oh God, gorgeous. Just gorgeous. And she actually does a really good job playing the conflicted detective who is headstrong to take you on, headstrong, except she obviously would be better than the band Trapped. But she does, she just wants to keep her past, keep people at arm's length because she has a secret from her past that we find out about a little bit later. And there's a little bit of history, as far as I can tell from the text. There's Borneo Island. The border was, the site of some violence from 1967 to 1990. There was a guy named Ambong who some locals say haunts the forest, protects some, kills others. But I will say right now that even though it kind of thinks like it kind of seems like maybe at first might go down the supernatural route, no, there's actual people involved in this. Had it gone the supernatural route, I think Borderless Fog would have been an even more hilarious title. Maybe you could have had the Fog kill them. I would have actually preferred that. It would have been better than the remake of the Fog. But nevertheless, Miss Marino is just stunning. I do want to say that once again. It is well shot. There's some great cinematography here. There's a teenage girl along with her deaf sister, and they are involved in a plot where there's some human trafficking going on, and there are some creepy people that have their own, motives for why they want to be involved in this, why they are involved in this, and why they want certain things to continue unabated. And basically, Sonia is going to, throw a wrinkle into this. Thomas also, they kind of try to throw a red herring that maybe he is also involved in this, and maybe he is, maybe he isn't. You'll have to wait for the spoilers, unless you've seen it, and then you know. But there's talk of, communism and other stuff, and people being at odds over geopolitical stuff. And she also does have to wear protective sunglasses. It has something to do with how sunlight affects her eyes. I can identify. It seems like with her, it's more of a medical condition or something from her past. But what could actually be going on? It actually ends up being pretty simple, even if some parts of it end up pretty incomprehensible. And I think some of the stuff will play out better in Indonesia and other particular, similar cultural places. But it's actually not all that bad. It's not great. I do have some issues. I think it's both a little bit too long and also a little bit rushed. I think there are things that they take their time on that they really don't need to. There's a guy named Silas that does factor in. No, he's not the last real man, not the guy from Ring of Honor. Anybody that's a wrestling fan gets that. Everybody else that doesn't, you are confused. But yes, they keep investigating. They keep running into some roadblocks. End of the line. And they eventually figure out that, okay, there is something weird going on here. From there, we do get... I did find it funny, there was this one point where they were cutting down this honeycomb. Like these villagers on this river, they were cutting down this honeycomb and everything on this tree. And I said, man, Indonesian honeycomb cereal is a lot harder to make. But that being said, it's all connected. The heads aren't connected because the people keep losing their heads. But there's stuff going back to like these natives, the Dayak, who, factor in a little bit later on. And from there, we find out a little bit more about our particular couple leads, and especially Sonya, and that's it. We then end up getting to a conclusion that eventually, I do have a few more questions than maybe I got answers by the end of it, but it is what it is. Maybe who's actually involved in this, maybe it was something supernatural, who knows. But it is on Netflix if you want to check it out. I've seen some decent Indonesian, like horror, suspense stuff. There was one, I believe, called Indigo. I think that was Indonesian. That was pretty entertaining, even if it was a little bit longer. And also there's some stuff about you need to treat your kids better. I'll just say that. But I am going to get into spoilers, which won't take very long because there's only a few things that fully grip me enough for me to remember. But it's on Netflix if you want to check it out. Again, Miss Marino, absolutely stunning. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So, the two missing girls... There's two missing girls after this one lady was trying to sell them, into slavery, human trafficking. But she ends up dead. Why does she end up dead? Who knows? Because her head ends up basically decapitated. She's lost her head. You lose your head on the Indonesian-Malaysian border if it wasn't attached. And the two sisters are lost in the woods. Sindai, I think is the name, Sindai. She ends up getting wrecked, shall we say, in the forest. She ends up dying. Aram, who does sign language, she's deaf. She ends up going missing. Sonya is bound and determined to figure out what's going on. It also turns out that she is trying to assuage her guilt because while she was kind of gotten into detective work by her dad, she wanted to prove it wasn't just her dad that got her to this point. That sure, he may have gotten her a lead, but she was going to prove her worth. And then she ends up accidentally hitting a girl on her bike, and the other cops help cover it up. And that's something that has haunted her. She has wanted to basically contact the parents of the girl and basically beg for their forgiveness. Tomas also is one of the Dayaks. He has to cover up his tattoos. I guess it's like a native tattoo thing. And there's this one military guy, that it turns out actually is, who knows a little bit more about Sonya. But there is a line, you can't let your guilt consume you. You can still redeem your mistakes. There's something about July 17th. There's this guy, Boyang, I believe is how you say it. He kind of walks with a bit of a limp, almost too much of a limp, like you can totally tell that he's faking it. It turns out he's one of the guys involved. There's also a guy named Agam that is a bit of a creep that has been involved in some of the murders, but not all of them. And it turns out this Boyang guy is actually doing it so everyone can see. That's actually why he did it. I don't know exactly fully the reason and everything. I mean, some of the stuff I think got lost in translation. But she ends up basically getting in a shootout sort of in the forest, the foggy forest. And he's like, oh, you must, you must see differently or whatever, because she had the things with her eyes. And he actually gave her a concoction earlier to help fix her eyes, or at least help her eyes a little bit, even though she still needed the sunglasses. And a little bit earlier, it actually turns out there was this guy, Panka, the detective guy, the police investigator guy, they was involved in this human trafficking, getting kickbacks, and he actually pushed her down some kind of old silo thing, like this old like shed warehouse thing, whatever it was. And Thomas found out there was this terrible CGI crash where I was like, oh, that was a choice. That didn't look all that good. And Thomas ends up basically dead. And she ends up, she's not sure if she got the guy or not, this Boyang guy. Boyang, however you say it. I'm sorry. I'm really trying. It seemed like they had 3 different pronunciations. She must come back. She must, come to grips with her past. So she goes back. And then she's looking along. She's just going along and then sees a bunch of school kids looking at something. And it's the head of him hanging there. Did Ombong protect them all? Was somebody else doing it? Was it a zombie? I don't know. We then cut to 1972 where somebody's washing off their goddamn boots. Maybe that was Bong. I don't know. If it seems like I'm more confused than anything else, because I kind of am. I liked it enough as far as the cinematography, and again, Miss Marino looked pretty goddamn good, but it gets a C+. It gets barely a passing grade, because at least there's enough meat to it. It's not great. I'm not going to say it's exactly like the best crime thriller I've seen. It's all right. Even if it's messy and a little bit, and probably a lot of it plays better as far as Indonesian cultures, or plays over better with Indonesian culture. That being said, C+, it's fine. I do need to check out more Miss Marino stuff because, God, she's beautiful. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritland. I'll see you soon.